I want to welcome everybody to today's session titled Key Trends in Microsoft Audits and SAM. My name is Darryl Ullman, and I'm the co-founder and chief consulting officer for MSS Consulting Group. And I will be your host for today's session, and I'll be presenting I think a really hot topic, if I may say so, in the last 12 months, and I plan to share with you my best practices, hands-on experience, and some of our day-to-day learning of Microsoft Audits and SAM. I think we've got a full house. I can see some people are still logging on, but I think to keep to the planned 60-minute presentation and in consideration of those participants that have joined on time, I am going to kick off the presentation as planned. The presentation will be available following today's webinar on our YouTube site. So please, if you want to log on to Emerset, just going to YouTube, put in Emerset, and you'll find our channel or our current and past presentation. A few words about Emerset. We are an international software licensing consulting company. We're privately owned and founded in 2004, so it's 13 years since we founded the company. We operate both in North America, Europe, and in EMEA. Some of our key competencies, and they're growing all the time, are software audit mitigation, contract renewals, licensing, consulting services, data. One second. I want to make sure. One of the participants said that you cannot hear me. Let me just do a quick check to see that everybody can hear me. I'm going to just open it up 1 second quickly. Okay, so I can see one of the participants has just given me a thumbs up that sounds okay. So please, if anybody else has got an issue with sound, please just check your own personal headset or speakers. It looks like that on our side things are working. Just a quick hands up. If anybody else can't hear me, to see if this is not a general issue or just somebody with a specific technical problem. I think that Jacobo, thank you for that notification. So I'm going to continue as planned. If anybody else can't hear me or any other, thank you, Tone, anybody else has got an issue, please just raise your hand there, and I'll try and correct it on my side. So as I'll just finalize the key competencies, contract renewals, licensing, consulting services, data discovery, entitlement analysis, benchmarking, and some additional cloud services that we've added on today, like all other providers of consulting services. So we're going to talk about why software audits go wrong, audit fundamentals and the process behind them, how to control the audit outcome, and what are the stages to go through in order to finalize an audit. So let's discuss why software audits go wrong. There are quite a few reasons. So one of them, let's start with some of the basics. Okay? So one of them is what I call insufficient contract knowledge of the specific auditor or partner on behalf of Microsoft. It could be Oracle, it could be IBM, or any other company. Oracle does their own audit, so it's slightly different. But Veritas or VMware that use third-party auditors. So basically what we see many times is really insufficient understanding of the actual base contract. I call this the core competency. So everything around understanding specific customer contracts and terms and conditions. Really what I'm looking at here is not the general terms and conditions of a contract, but reading that specific customers or that specific organization that's under an audit, their specific clauses, making sure that the auditor has all the amendments and all the specific concessions. That is not, it might seem basic, but auditors don't always have that information. So we're looking at, first of all, not having that contractual knowledge from the full picture of that specific contract. Another issue is interpreting the language. We all know that language of a contract can be interpreted in many different ways. What we find is that, again, the auditor will interpret the contract language, of course, in the favor of their employee, being Microsoft. We're going to be talking about Microsoft specific today, but again, it's the same for any other vendor. So, again, your responsibility is to make sure, as an organization, when we're looking at why audits go wrong, to make sure that the auditor has all the correct contract information that's available. That means don't wait for them to find the contract or receive the contracts from Microsoft, but make sure that you push that information to them so everybody has the same information when getting into the analysis or into the contract review. Another part of contract knowledge is entitlement data. That's the other side. So you've got the contract, you've got the terms and conditions, use rights, and everything else, but that comes with entitlements. So when we're looking at entitlements, it's not only about Microsoft's famous Microsoft licensing statement, the MLS, that we all know about, or not everybody knows about. Sorry, I'm going to rephrase myself. We've come across many organizations that are not aware that there's a document called MLS. An MLS is a Microsoft licensing statement. It's an official document that you can receive from Microsoft either directly or via your reseller, and that will provide you with full history of everything to do with your licensing entitlements, mergers, acquisitions, again, if that was registered within Microsoft systems. Your responsibility, okay, is to validate that MLS includes all of your previous acquisitions. Maybe there are licenses there that do not belong to you anymore due to a spin-off, and Microsoft's wrongly going to, at one stage, going to count those licenses, and then soon afterwards, we've seen that before, somebody's going to notice that those weren't supposed to be included, and then your whole license position is going to change. So it can be good or could be bad, but from the start, it's your responsibility to review that MLS, make sure that you've got the same MLS that the auditor has, review it, and basically approve its accuracy. In addition, there are a lot of other specific licensing entitlements that won't be in that MLS. OEM licenses, it won't be there. You have to provide them. Special license grants that you receive either from a merger acquisition or directly from Microsoft. That might be in an amendment. It might be in a separate notification. Your responsibility, because you want the audit to be as accurate as possible, to push that information to the auditor. ISV contract information. What do I mean by that? For example, if you purchase third-party software, Commvault, for example, and you need to make sure many times, again, Commvault's a good example. Commvault usually comes with SQL Server Enterprise Edition licenses, part of that overall agreement. The auditor does not have that information, does not have that knowledge. Now, if you don't go and dig out those contracts, those acquisition documents, procurement documents, and push them to the auditor, again, we're going to come back to lack of contractual and entitlement knowledge. So as much of the responsibility is of an auditor, in order to, there's a lot of responsibility on the organizational side. So in order to mitigate any lack of contractual information and contractual knowledge, you need to be in the driver's seat and make sure they have everything. When we start looking at the discovery process, so we've looked at contractual lack of knowledge, we've looked at misinterpreting contractual language, and potentially not having full entitlement. When we look at the discovery process of why software audits can go wrong and what's happening with the software world, we're really looking at auditors that are focused on the data only. So they're only here in the center. It's not on how the license is used, the use case, Does he bring his own device? Is it a company-owned device? Is he a third-party offshore user that is using a third-party device? What does that mean? So they only look at the data. You need to bring the color into the picture. And that means bringing in the color in regard to your industry, bringing in the color regarding your history, helping the auditor to classify the information correctly as DR, test, dev, QA. If you don't, it will be automatically qualified as production if you don't push that information. We don't see auditors, and I know I'm sure that there are auditors on the call. I did see some potential auditors that have joined the call. Please notice that they, from their perspective, they won't go through that list of servers and the naming convention and try on your behalf to identify what's dev and test, because the naming convention potentially could be completely out. So don't expect the auditor to know your naming convention and to accept that as it is. You need to provide them with a guideline to the naming convention, and if you've got a bad naming convention, and we see that more often than not, you need to be proactive and say, please give us that list of servers. We want to go through it. We want to tag it for you because we know our environment. Don't expect them to do the guesswork for you. And one of the biggest things that we see is AD that's completely messed up. AD lists that haven't been cleaned up in years, that have a lot of junk in them, that have external users with internal users, exchange-only users that shouldn't be there, and so on and so on and so on. You need to do a lot of cleanup. You need to provide clarity, and the auditor won't be able to get that at the first look at your information. And again, they're not really looking to clean it up. It's your responsibility. So that's where the gaps. That's at the very beginning of the process. We're not even deep down into the process. We're just at the beginning of the process, and you can already see why audits start at the wrong foot. And then we really get to the interpretation that we discussed a minute ago. So basically, we do see a lack of license knowledge, how licenses should be used, can be used, use cases, knowledge, industry specific, and again, it comes back to really emphasizing or sticking to the T's and C's of the rules of the license. It goes to SQL Server interpretation. You'll see it, of course, with the Office 365 E3 license or ECS license or E5 license that doesn't permit on-premise use of Office Professional licenses. You need to be up to date and running the Office 365 Click to Run Pro license. And if you don't have that, then potentially you've got a compliance issue, even though you might be covered with E3. All your current installations of Office Pro are a compliance gap. And the auditor will note that, and it's your position, your responsibility to provide the color and to why that's happened. Don't expect them to do that. They will note that as a compliance issue. And again, if you don't even bring up the reason why that's a compliance, the reason behind that compliance issue, they won't note it in the final ELP. Your responsibility is to request that they add your note or your input to the ELP. So you are allowed to add your notes that will go to Microsoft for the final commercial discussion. So we'll talk about this in a few more slides, but basically, even the final ELP is not a final ELP before you sign off on it and give them permission to provide it back to Microsoft. And it's your responsibility really to make sure that they add all of your notes. And the more you know the licensing rules and the reasoning behind why you do specific stuff, and to make sure it's entered into the ELP, the easier your commercial discussions with Microsoft will be. One of the things, and I've been pushed back on this, I was at a conference lectured at a conference, and some participants from one of the big auditing firms participated, and at the end of the audit, at the end of the presentation, they were, I was told that they were very unhappy with what I said in this slide regarding the age of the average auditor and their experience. And there was a whole discussion around that, where my position is still that was last year, that this is still one of the biggest issues. Auditors have got a lot of work, and I'm happy for them. And their average age of the standard auditor is really young and really inexperienced. And I want to give you an example. And that inexperience, of course, is going to work against you. I'm just going to looking at the slide again for the 100th time to make sure I didn't put in anybody's personal information. This is a team lead for an audit that I finalized on Friday with a very large international company, one of the Fortune 500 companies. And this is from LinkedIn, the specific buyer of the lead auditor. This is his experience, a year and 11 months. Actually, when we started, he had less experience. And this worked against everybody. The audit took, I think, almost 7.5 months to complete. It could have been completed in 2 to 3 months. We went back and forth on the information. The interpretation was completely incorrect. His previous audits that he ran were a small organization. This was almost a global, I don't know, almost 12,000 employee organization, multiple data centers, hosting environments, DR, dev, test, you name it, offshoring, everything that you can have in a large multinational. This company had it, and this was specific lead, and it caused us major issues. So this is something that you need to look at. When you look at, when you do your background check and you see who's going to be your contact within the auditor company, look up the bio on LinkedIn, see who you're dealing with, see what their experience is, because that will set the stage of how proactive you need to be and what kind of discussions you're going to have. So let's talk about a different perspective. So we've been looking at potentially why things go wrong at the start of an audit and why the gaps start to increase as you move forward. But let's look at it from the vendor's perspective. So a vendor will tell you, again, we're talking about Microsoft specific here, I'm giving Microsoft specific examples, but it works in all directions, that auditors do great jobs, and they do great audits, and this is what they train to. And basically, the question is, then we know differently, then why is that their point of view? And it's very simple. Auditors are there to bring in more money. That's their position. And it's a very legitimate position. I've got nothing against it personally. I think that compliance is super important. And I think that organizations need to pay for their intellectual property that they use and pay Microsoft or Oracle, whoever they need to. But again, you must understand that there are different interests, and that interest causes conflict. And that's something that everybody needs to understand, even auditors that will say that they are completely objective. They can't be objective. Okay? We live in the real world. They've got an employee that pays the money. They can't be objective. So again, it's good to understand that, to put everything on the table so everybody understands exactly the rules of the game. Okay, so we really started, and this is the way I like to start a presentation, with some of the hardcore, what goes wrong. So we understand what goes wrong and what can go wrong. So now that everybody understands that these audits aren't exactly a walk in the park, and whoever's gone through an audit knows this, but if you haven't, I want you to know this beforehand, that it's not a pleasant occurrence. There might be very pleasant people and nice people and courteous, but again, they've got a job to get done. So why are audits increasing? Audits are increasing very simple, for a very simple reason. Everybody's under pressure. Account managers are under increased pressure to increase revenue, even though IT budgets are shrinking due to the cloud. Very, very simple. Organizations, vendors, Microsoft is pushing customers to the cloud. And in order to get customers on the cloud, they need leverage. And so an audit is a great way to leverage the onboarding of an organization to the cloud through some great opportunities to mitigate license compliance issues by postponing that, giving the organization time to clean up get their house in order. But please, while you're getting your house in order, we would really love you to jump onto SPE E3 and adding some nice security add-ons. So again, that's business, commercial, everything is legitimate. You need to understand what's happening behind this scene. One of my consultants that does Oracle has got a fantastic presentation that goes by the name of something to the title of how Oracle is increasing their cloud licensing through audit, something like that. And he shows exactly the way that Oracle is pushing organizations from a standard contractual on-premise agreement to cloud consumption, even though they're not using the cloud, just through increased audit pressure. So this is a tactic or strategy used not only by Microsoft. So they're not alone in this. So let's look a bit at some of the actual audit rights. So I don't know if anybody's actually seen this, but whoever's got an EA or a select agreement or a MTSA agreement today, slightly different to this, but you have a Microsoft Business and Service Agreement. Usually your Microsoft Business Service Agreements have been signed 10, 12, 15 years ago, and they're still in play. You don't renew them every 3 years, but the same terms and conditions regarding audit verification, compliance verification, are still in place. So first of all, what I do recommend that after the session, everybody goes back to the contractual manager, asks them to get the business and service agreement. I can tell you 50% of you, if not higher numbers, will have an issue actually getting that contract or finding it. But you can get it from your retailer potentially, or maybe from Microsoft. But I wouldn't ask Microsoft for the retailer because you might just trigger something that you're not looking to trigger. But try and get a hold of this, and you'll see exactly what your verification process is. So basically, Microsoft provides customers at least 30 days notice. 30 days is nothing. We all know that. I'll show you in a second what an audit letter looks like and the types of audit. So this is really a hardcore audit. And then you need to know that remedies for non-compliance. So if you are on licensed use for or distribution is more than 5%, there are not many organizations out there, even with fantastic asset management processes in place and tools that can really be compliant within the 5% cap. So if you're not within that 5% cap, you're going to reimburse Microsoft for the cost of an audit. Depending on the size of the organization, that can be anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000, and sometimes even more, depending on how long the audit took and the size of your organization. So that's quite a large sum of money to reimburse. And of course, you need to be aware, and this is part of the leverage for negotiation, if there are any licenses, any shortfalls, you'll need to pay a license fee of 125% of list price, not of your negotiated EA, true up pricing. That could be level A, B, or C, or D with a potential discount, but list price, 125% of list price. So your penalty is pretty high. You're going to be starting from a really difficult mitigation perspective. You need to be aware of this. Get out your contracts, make sure that you understand what your audit terms are. Audits are not only initiated by Microsoft based on their agreement, they can be initiated by the BSA. So many of you might be knowledgeable and know about the BSA. They've been more. There are times where they're more active, other times where they not as active as they maybe used to be in the past. But basically, the BSA is a software alliance consortium of Microsoft and some other the largest software vendors, and basically they have, I would really say, an important role to play in the world of IP. They are there to make sure that organizations don't abuse the intellectual property and the product use rights of software vendors. And I've got the utmost respect for the BSA. But you need to be aware that the BSA potentially, again, from your perspective as an organization, is not your friend. They do an important job, but again, they are looking for organizations that have a compliance issue or piracy. They've even got a hotline called 1-800-NO-PIRACY. And many times organizations come to me and they say, I've got no idea why we've got an audit from the BSA, don't know where this has come from. You must understand that they've got a hotline, and if you've got a employee that left not at the best terms, or they want to get even with their employee or with somebody in the organization, this is a fantastic way to do it. We've dealt with multiple audits that have been initiated, potentially, if you want to put it that way, by ex-employees of organizations. So be aware, it's not only Microsoft that potentially can initiate an audit. One of your employees can initiate an audit. So you also need to make sure, from a contractual perspective, with all your employees that have any kind of knowledge of your software or IT infrastructure, what the confidentiality clause they have within their contract, if they can and cannot go out and basically blow the whistle on you when they're working or when they leave, penalties. So you need to make sure that you take care of your house, get your house cleaned up as well. Let's talk about some of the types of audits. So, as I said, I talked about Microsoft initiating an audit. I showed you what the contractual terms look like. We talked about the BSA. That could be another initiator, but again, it's not really the BSA. It could be one of your employees or one of your suppliers or vendors or anybody else. So basically, there are various types of audits. And please, this is something that if you've got any Microsoft folk on the call, I'm sure that they won't agree with me. And I'll show you something from Microsoft blog in a second, and they don't agree with me. Every type of license review, SAM, self-audit, independent auditor, at the end of the day, these are all audits. Okay, each one has got a different severity. Of course, I would prefer any of my organizations or customers to be under a license review or a SAM, software asset management, or a self-audit. It's better to be under any one of these three than an independent auditor. Basically, what these mean is a license review is very similar to SAM, software asset management. You get a notification from a Microsoft partner. Today, it's really becoming more of an internal Microsoft process where they want to assist you in putting into place an infrastructure of software asset management as a best practice. So the concept, I apologize, the concept is correct. The process is right, but there is a definite agenda behind that. At the end of the day, if you understand what you have in your organization and you go through a software asset management review, potentially you'll need to pay for some unlicensed software. So it's an audit. There's no penalties. It's done with, I would say, Microsoft is one of the nicest, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but they are very forthcoming and courteous when it comes to a SAM or self-audit. They work with you. They're not looking to penalize you or for you to pay for anything that you really don't need. They want you to clean up your house. But again, it's a type of audit because you are providing them with everything to do with your infrastructure. And from your perspective and from your manager's and executive perspective, when you don't budget to pay anything or pay a certain amount to Microsoft coming fiscal year, and you hit with a few $100,000 bill that's not being budgeted, it's very difficult to wrap it and sell it as a partnership with Microsoft. So again, you need to understand that the first three, license review, SAM, self-audit, are all audits, but they're soft audits. They're done in collaboration with the organization. There's no penalties. There's no 5% threshold. There's no reimbursement of the audit fees. It's a better place to be if you're under an audit, but you need to work with Microsoft. An independent auditor is really the hardcore audit done by Deloitte PwC or KPMG or any other firm that works with Microsoft, and that comes to the type of my previous slides where I spoke about lack of knowledge, contractual knowledge, young auditors. So this is really the right-hand side over here, the independent auditors. As I said, there's so much confusion about audits that there was a blog post not long ago, I think I saw it a week or two ago, please, I might be off by a few days, by the Microsoft licensing team, that they, out of the blue, they felt that they needed to explain what a SAM is, what a software asset management process is, compared to an audit. So they came out with this FAQ, and there was a whole blog on it, and somebody wrote about it on CIO magazine. So it's a big thing, okay? These self-audits and these SAMs. So as I said, Microsoft is not positioning SAM and self-audits as an audit, and they're really trying to clear and provide information and understanding behind it. And I think I did provide you with that differentiation between the two. But again, if something's not planned and you didn't initiate it, okay, it's not something that something that you've initiated. So I call a spade when I see one. Okay, so this is again some examples. Again, I wanted to share with you what this looks like. We get many phone calls from organizations that get a SAM letter. This is about, I don't know, this is from last year, so it's been tweaked, so it might slightly be different. I have an updated slide, I apologize. But basically, this is what a SAM notification looks like. It's a review, software asset manager, license review. Microsoft would like to work with your company to review all Microsoft software products in use throughout the organization. This review process will be undertaken with all customers over a period of time, and so on and so on and so on. So really, this is the type of self kind of audit where Microsoft will work with you. You will need to run the Microsoft map tool throughout your organization. That's the Microsoft scanning tool that will run through your organization. Agent list, pretty cool tool actually, if it's configured correctly. All auditors use it. We use it when we work with customers as well. Really good tool. But again, you run the map tool, you'll be opening up your house to Microsoft. Don't misunderstand me. I do encourage you to work hand in hand if you receive the SAM process, but please manage it. I'll talk about it in the coming closing slides. You need to work with Microsoft, but at the same time, you need to manage the process. So I always say you better be prepared, because it's going to happen to all organizations over every 3 or 4 years. You're going to need to do this. So I always say, why don't you already get yourself ready, proactively run the map tool, proactively get your licensing estate in order. So when you do get this notification, you don't start looking for organizations like us via the internet and Googling and sending us emails and picking up the phone, and this letter gets lost, and then it comes to the last minute when you've got to already get a third notification, and things are starting to, the pressure's building up, and then you want to understand exactly what your options are. So again, be aware, this is one of the types of audits that you can get. Again, it's SAM review. I won't say audit, a SAM review. I'm already getting some personal notes here from some of the participants that are just pointing out that difference between the audit and the self-assessment. So basically, let's talk a bit about the process so you understand what you can look forward to. So again, I say knowledge and understanding what an audit looks like really helps you sleep well at night. And I want everybody, and I think everybody wants to go home and sleep well at night. So the more you understand the process, the better you are prepared. So basically, what we're looking at from standard audit process, and I'm taking more of a hardcore audit, okay? Either a SAM or not a self-assessment, or please sign off on this document, but something that you really be proactive. You need to send actual deployment information. The auditor runs scripts and stuff like that within your organization. So basically, sorry, the audit really starts off either by the auditor or a self-audit SAM we spoke about. You get an audited letter, 30-day notice, and that's the initiation. So really standard. Everything really starts from a phone call or from an email or from a formal audit letter, and usually have 30 days notice. And then basically they set up a whole process behind that They introduce the team, you introduce the team, you go through the timelines, the project timeline, very, very well set up, scanning of the environment, NDAs, and everything else. So basically, once that audit has initiated, you're going to be looking at full scan of your environment. It's going to be through the Microsoft Map tool. It's always in use today. It's almost a standard with auditors, but it's not only the Map tool. They can request your snow data. They can request your SCCM data, your land desk, your Big Fix data, your software now data, CNDB data, and they'll come with their own scripts. So they are really out there to collect data. So be ready to full exposure of your organization. If I didn't mention it, I'll mention it now. Make sure you've got an NDA in place. Security protocols are in place. Confidentiality regarding the use of your information. If you're in the EU, then there's issues around sharing Active Directory usernames and email addresses. So you might want to obscure the data. There are quite a few things that we haven't got time to go through everything that can be done prior to an audit, but you need to be aware of all these things depending on your region and specific regulations around data privacy and data security issues. Don't forget you are going through a full exposure of your internal information. So first stage, scanning, data collection. Second stage, and that's sometimes in parallel, so it's not exactly as I'm showing here now. Entitlement collection, what I talked about, the MLS, but not only the MLS, be proactive. Provide all additional information regarding OEM licenses, ISP licenses, third-party licenses, anything that you guys, ladies, that are on the call, collect and have, please push it towards the software vendor, the software auditor. You will then, once the entitlements are well classified, scanning is done, you receive a draft effective license positioning document named ELP, standard naming. It's basically a gap analysis. This is where when you get the draft, you need to get really proactive. I would say get proactive beforehand if you implement everything that I've said up to date. But even if you haven't, now is the time to roll up your sleeves and really start being proactive. Go through the ELP, go through every single SQL Server database. Make sure they got it right, that the tagging's correct. Make sure that if it's a virtual or physical, it's correct. If they interpreted the calls, if they virtual calls or physical calls, make sure that if vMotion is enabled or not, if that's in the report, that your ES6 machines have been well configured and all your virtual machines have been associated correctly. Make sure that there's a differentiation between the types of users in your AD, external, internal, BYOD, and so on and so on. So this is when you need to get really, really involved. Then once you provide that initial feedback, they'll provide you with a second draft, a third draft ELP. That's where, again, you go through the final fine-tuning mitigation process. I already call this the fine-tuning stage, trying to provide as much evidence as possible for the commercial discussions. And then the compliance settlement, this is already the commercial settlement or the commercial discussions between you and Microsoft once the ELP has been handed off from the auditor. So basically, we've looked at why audits go wrong. We've reviewed how that gap starts to increase really from the start, the types of audits that are out there and the difference between them, the vendor's perspective, the auditor's perspective, the organization's perspective, and I want to just touch on some of the risks that not everybody is aware of when they enter into an audit. And again, the reason I'm bringing this up, because if you are aware of the risks, then you can be proactive in the process, or proactive in even, I won't say an audit, I'll say an audit's almost inevitable, one of the audits, because that's just a way of life in the IT world today. But you really need to make sure that management is aware of the risk, executive sponsors know what's going on. So basically, some of the key aspects that we see on a day-to-day basis is loss of control over the negotiations or the resolution. So basically, once there's leverage, there's compliance issues, there's IP issues, you've got your negotiation position is definitely in risk. Unbudgeted spend, big issue, especially with the IT budgets the way they are. Big risk. Audit costs, you might need to reimburse the cost of the audit. I said it can be anywhere between $25,000 and $100,000, and we've seen even higher costs required or requested. I'm not even talking about the damaged vendor relationships, because between you and Microsoft, I'm sure they are a strategic partner or strategic vendor, and this is a relationship that you want to really be careful when you manage it. And again, I will say that from a customer vendor perspective, Microsoft compared to other vendors is tries to keep the relationship at a high priority, even when a negotiation, audit does go, when an audit is in place. So that's something I definitely want to point out for their benefit, compared to, I won't say the names. Legalization penalties, legal actions potentially. We've got a customer now that they forced the ELT results, they didn't accept them, and 12 months later they are in court. So it's not fun. These audits can also end up in legal actions. There's going to be legal fees, and basically you being misdirected from your day-to-day business to deal with legal consequences of a compliance issue. So that's in the extreme. We don't see it that much, but we are seeing it more than before. Resources. An audit will take up a lot of resources. We've just gone through an audit where the auditor, because of their experience, went back and forth and requested more and more data from the same people, and they were pushing back with their management because this was really, really a deep focus on the day-to-day business. So you need to take into consideration an audit is going to require internal IT resources, because the auditor won't run it. You won't allow them to run scripts, and you won't allow them to run the map tool. You'll need to run it. And if they're not happy with the results because you did a bad run, they'll ask you to run it again and again. So this can be a pretty heavy resource, high resource and unplanned resources will definitely be required. I apologize. Management folks, of course, need to make sure that management is aware of this. There might be a steering committee if you're a large organization, and and you are a publicly traded organization. And again, of course, negative PR if this ever does get out. So how do we control the outcome of the audit? And now we've got around 15 minutes. I'm going to try to wrap up and leave some time for questions. And if I don't have time, then please you can email me after the presentation. So some of the preparedness, what you need to do. So we've talked about all the risks, what can go wrong. Now let's talk how you can prepare. So basically, once you get the audit, you need to alert management and stakeholders of the upcoming audit. You need to share management the risk with. You need to share and manage the risks and the potential outcomes. So if you know of any potential issues upfront with your SQL Server installation or with your 365 rollout or with your hosting environment, bring it up, put it on the table so everybody understands what the risks are. Internal governance and escalation model. So put together an audit project team. You need to do with the project management, legal, IT, and vendor manager. If you need, again, depending on the size of your company and type of audit, a C-level and board member steering committee. Put together an internal communication plan so everybody's on the same page, and please look out for data leakage. So make sure that nobody is providing information to one of your account reps or technical reps that basically can and will be used against you. So just make sure about that, that all employees are aware of the audit and they understand data leakage and the consequence of that. So basically, what will be inventory? Just make sure your OEM, Windows OS OEM is going to be inventory, server data, even employee-owned devices, home PCs, if they are using any of the home use rights, tablets, smartphones, of course, retail purchases, legacy systems that are just out there for backup or for historical application compatibility, any vendor machines running in your organization, or even machines that you have in a hosted environment will be part of that audit. Vendors that access internal applications, so their access is going to be audited, remote desktop application, VDI, so on. Your DR environment, and of course the dev and test environment as well. So what documents do you need to prepare? Your license statements, your purchase orders, as I said, any type of agreement and amendments, special license grants, ISV licenses, proof of OEM licenses, resale invoices if you've lost any of your actual entitlements, and outsourcing agreements. So if you've got an outsourcing agreement or hosted environment, you need to find that agreement that shows that somebody else has got responsibility for your licenses, and you need to provide the auditor that information. Data discovery, I love this slide personally because nobody can keep a secret in an organization. So please, data discovery, make sure everybody in your organization is aware of the audit and they don't start providing information to anybody from the vendor side, from the auditor side. So I'm running through some of the slides. I think I've got 5 or 6 slides left. So data discovery by the auditor. Basically, the auditor will use self-developed scripts. They are approved by Microsoft, and they are pretty nifty scripts. Let me tell you, they do a good job. So they'll find things that you might not even be aware of, or maybe your software asset management tool hasn't really caught yet, and they look at the information from various angles to try and cross-reference that information. And of course, they use standard map tool information as well. You need to look out and be aware of data confidentiality from the auditor side. So this is part of your, again, we're talking about being prepared for the audit. Where will the vendor store the data? Who will have access to the data? What will happen to the data once the audit is finished? And so on and so on. So you need to be aware of this and you need to prepare yourself in advance. Some of the data consideration that you take into consideration, some of the consideration you take into that you need to review. Sorry, I've been running through this for 50 minutes now. So basically, where's the data going to be collected from internally? Which data sets are going to be affected? Bandwidth, is it going to be affected? Do you have a manufacturing plant? Do you have a hosted environment that if you're a financial organization, how's it going to impact your production service? Is it going to impact your production service? Do you need to run everything in a test environment, and so on? So you need to really understand that when you test the scripts, don't run out there and run the scripts or the map tool. Test it, understand where it's going to be running. If you're a global organization, then time zones are crucial if you're running the scans during standard EST, Eastern Daylight Time, for those of you that are in the US, or CET time in Europe. You need to make sure that the machines are connected. You might need to run multiple scans from different locations at different times. Otherwise, it will keep repeating. It will keep repeating itself. And if you don't provide the full information, then the auditor will start extrapolating data. So they'll take what-if scenarios. It could work in your benefit. Sometimes the extrapolation will be in the benefit of the customer. Usually it's not, because they take the full assumption that if they found something on one machine, every machine has it. And that's really due to lack of ability to go through a full discovery process of everything in the organization. finalizing the audit. So audits are complex, and we all understand why. And so a lot of interpretation goes into this. So this is why we understand the reason for mitigation and why you need to be very vigilant when interpreting the information. At the end of the process, this is the kind of settlement letter that you will receive. So this is an organization that was here at the bottom, 27% non-compliant, slightly over the standard 5% threshold. And of course, they asked them to pay the full fee, the full audit fee. They did refer them back to the Microsoft Business Service Agreement, just to show you that the Business Service Agreement is a crucial piece of information. And again, this is what the first settlement letter looks like. Again, there are commercial discussions. Don't misunderstand me. There is pushback. There is compromise between Microsoft and the end customer. But you don't want to reach a situation. That's what you all. The reason you joined today, hopefully, is that you don't want to reach this situation as a settlement letter, or you're in a process of an audit, and you want to try and mitigate this final settlement letter potentially. So who pays the cost of the audit? We discussed that, but just wanted to point out that a recent study has found that half the respondents reported audit fees of over $100,000 or more. 20% of organizations reported true-ups cost of more than $1 million. So this is a huge impact on your budget, especially a unbudgeted cost. So again, this is real life. Let's just summarize with 5 key takeaways, and then I'm going to open up the session for the next 6 or 7 minutes for Q&A, and I'll unmute participants. So take responsibility for the process. I like to use the phrase, be in the driver's seat. Take responsibility. Push things forward. Be proactive. Don't wait for the auditor to do the work for you. Set security policies at the start, data security, data confidentiality, who has access, who works with the auditor, and so on. Prepare all contracts and purchase documents. Again, don't assume they have everything. Provide all your historical license reviews, mergers, acquisitions, understanding of what happened, spin-offs, your responsibility. And again, please challenge everything. Really challenge everything. Don't take what the auditor says for granted as the full truth. It's their interpretation. Okay, so basically, sorry, I've reached the end of my session. Just one last slide, and we're open for Q&A. So we do offer special complimentary services for all of our webinar participants. So please, if you want to utilize our specific special SQL Server promotion on an audit spot health check, please do. We provided a one-time off health check of the SQL Server environment because we found that is one of the biggest compliance issues and one of the most complex areas to manage. So a special offer for our participants today, and a complimentary Microsoft Audit Consulting call. If you would like one, please, again, happy to provide you with a 1-hour consulting call. At the bottom here, just going to info@mrset.com. Under contact us, just put in MS Audit Webinar, and we'll help you out. And you can always basically contact me directly. It's very simple, Daryl, D-A-R-Y-L, @mrset.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've got a blog on my on our website, so please feel free to contact me directly. So with that, I'm going to open up the session for questions.